I did have a couple of slides that I think will help minimize how much I need to speak. But the gist of my standing up here, we are not a reg tech company. As you will have heard and read and, in preparation for this week, we are a company that makes it easier for different money senders, payments providers to send money over borders, over currencies, over platforms. And so why am I standing here? We stand at the center of a number of different companies, whether mobile network operators, whether money transfer companies, whether banks, which, as you will have heard this morning alone, all have very different compliance functions. They have different tools that they use to verify that they're keeping up with the fintech. And it becomes our job and part of the promise that we make to our partners that once you join our hub, you can be guaranteed, no matter who you connect with across the hub, a certain standard, a certain level of compliance, of money laundering protection, of monitoring and protection against financing terrorism and other financial crimes. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about how we do that. This will be very concrete. For those of you that are not familiar with MFS Africa, we connect partners on a one-on-one basis. So once you've joined our hub, you theoretically have the option to connect to any other partner on the hub. This means that everybody comes on with their own way of doing things. Our job as MFS Africa is to make sure that you meet certain standards so that we can assure a level for the ecosystem. We do this through what we call the 7 lines of defense. Those of you who have had some engagement with your compliance functions or thought a little bit about what happens in sort of financial crime compliance will be familiar with the 3 lines of defense, which effectively is the idea that you go out, you know your customer, you KYC, you know who's using your service. You maybe have some policies, you've got a framework internally that manages both your risk profile, but also how you're going to allow transactions to run across your platform, whether it's in terms of velocity, whether it's in terms of volume. And then you run an audit periodically to make sure that your systems are in place. So we may, for example, as we do, have an MTN Uganda on one side, doing all of those changes and receiving money from Safaricom Kenya, which has its own set of standards. It's a completely different ecosystem. It's a completely different group. MTN Vodacom, there's absolutely nothing that's going to suggest that they may use the same tools to ensure that their transactions are compliant. But in addition to that, they operate in different countries. And what Kenya requires and what Uganda requires could be completely different. The same is true. We've got EcoBank on our hub as a partner. As a bank, they're subject to a completely different set of regulations. And we don't believe that it's our job to dictate or in any way suggest that these partners should do things differently. We want to know that they're compliant and they're meeting their obligations. But at the same time, we believe, as Daria mentioned earlier, that it should be something that we all take for granted, that you can sit at your phone or you can sit at your computer, you can sit at your iPad and make a payment, whether you're sending money to a family member, whether you're paying for school fees, whether you're buying something online, and not have to worry about what the recipient uses. And so it's our job to make sure that those different systems and those different regulatory obligations speak together. And that's where the 7th line of defense comes in, taking it that each partner has their 3 lines and we sit in the middle as the 7th. And we both bring those together, but we also make sure that they speak to each other. I don't think we're going to have any slides, so this will be very short. No, no, it's fine. I'm almost done. The idea really is that we recognize that our partners will be using a lot of the tools that we've seen today. For ourselves, and I think this has to do with just the age of the space that we work in and the speed with which regulation has been developed, but also the number of jurisdictions that we have to be able to engage with. We use proprietary systems. Okay, so here's our slide. Thank you very much, Veronica. So we sit in the middle, and this just gives you an overview of the 7 lines of defense that I was talking about. As I said, we use our own proprietary systems, and we build in different aspects of RegTech, whether it's machine learning, whether it's know your data, whether it's applying AI and different intelligence to transaction monitoring to ensure that everything that goes over the hub does in fact maintain our standards of the compliance that we promise our partners. They will not be subject to anything below that. We do that through both, I'll start with the second one, what we call Know Your Partner, which is our due diligence, which happens at the very beginning of our relationship with our partners. So there's not a single partner on the MFS hub that has not gone through quite a rigorous due diligence. We base this on FATF principles, we use the Wolfberg questionnaire, and then we use our own risk-based methodology that we've developed in-house. This allows us to have a good sense of who is on the hub and what kind of risk they introduce to the hub. Once you're on the hub, once you have been vetted, once a contract has been signed, once integration has taken place, and hopefully you're live and you're transacting, there are transactions that run every day, and we vet those transactions as well, which is the KYC. We don't actually have any contact with our end user customers. We rely on our partners to do what they need to do in line with their obligations in their particular jurisdictions in order to make sure that they're receiving the information that they require. But we do ask our partners when they sign on to the hub that they will provide us with a minimum level of KYC. And that is on the basis of the risk that they introduce into the hub. And we then run we run transaction monitoring as well as sanction screening and PEP analyses on every single transaction that will run over the hub. And that allows us to both ensure that we are providing our partners with a guarantee of risk, but also to change the risk levels that we've assigned to each partner if need be. For instance, we had a partner last year who was subject to some adverse media, and as a result, we changed their risk profile and had to monitor them on a regular basis more deeply, but also it changes things like how often we do partner visits, site visits, how often we check their compliance systems. And we also look at support and monitoring our partners. We're aware that from where we sit, we occupy quite a unique place in terms of our ability to understand the universe of money transfer and mobile payments. And we're also aware that a lot of our partners are figuring this out in real time. And so while we recognize that, hub member A may be doing the very fancy, sort of using iDetect and using very fancy AI and onboarding techniques, hub member B maybe still be scanning things by paper and onboard, there could be very different levels and ways that transactions and customers are being vetted and overseen. And we believe that while we are all figuring out how we are going to secure the ecosystem, if you will. There are ways in the meantime that we can continue to facilitate payments without compromising trust and sense of confidence in the service. This slide just gives you a little sense of a lot of the things that come up in our day-to-day as the compliance function at MFS Africa. We deal with different geographies. We've got a lot of KYC tools that we have to balance, we have to bring together. And I think the most exciting thing is probably the idea that we have access to data that can, instead of, I think in the past what happened a lot was you built your systems, you built your tools and you use them to analyze your data and to make sense of it. Now we have an opportunity to use that data to inform what we want those systems to be. And we both find that we have the opportunity to learn from our partners, but also to use our vantage point to inform ways that some of you and some of your peers are able to do what you do. Compliance, I believe, should be a collaborative space, because at the end of the day, the more we work together and the more we can secure that ecosystem, the easier it is for all of us to continue to do what we want to do. And there's a lot of shared learning that's possible. So I think on that note, I'll probably wrap up and just leave you with the idea that there's a lot that is happening at the moment, and we are at different levels in arriving at sort of whatever the promised land or the ideal would be. But we're always very happy to talk to people about sort of how to make your compliance journey as easy as possible, because at the end of the day, our goal is to get as many of you on the hub and sending secure and safe and reliable payments as possible. Thank you very much.